Lovely. And here we are. John Manzoni's returned to give us the last few thoughts. I've been just pondering a couple of questions over the course of the day. And one of the points that seems to me to keep coming out is about people feeling they have the sort of license to innovate, to take that risk, their sense of security they need to do so. And, you know, it's the sense of security and the license that you give people that supports the courage they need to make the leap. How can we give people that courage?
I mean, it's an interesting question because if, like me, you come into the public sector from the private sector, one of the first things you notice is the sort of general risk aversion. And it's not anybody's fault. And I was having this conversation today, actually, with one of the select committees that I happen to be in front of, and sort of railing against the fact that those select committees tend to put the civil service onto the back foot. They tend to make them feel defensive. Because there's a sort of lot of what I would call Monday morning quarterbacking as to why didn't you do that, and why didn't you get that right, and why didn't you do that, and why didn't you do that, and you sort of say, come on. But that whole thing puts our system into a risk-averse culture, which basically mitigates which prevents people taking managed risks, which prevents people innovating. So, what's the solution to that? And that's not the only thing that puts them into that frame. But what is the solution to that? And I think it comes down in the end to it's a cultural issue. And that comes down to leadership. Whether it's, and I've just heard the back end of the last panel, whether it's that risk aversion or whether it's the siloed nature in how we organize ourselves, all of that, I always say to people, you can have a nice life, you can probably, come to work every day, and why would you want to step out and you just have a nice time? Or you can make a difference. And the question then is, how do we invite people to step up, to make a difference, to be prepared to take a risk? And that comes down to leadership. And it isn't just top leadership, by the way, because leadership happens all the way down the system. So my own solution to this is to say to people at every level in the system, how in a tiny way can you invite your teams to take control of their own destiny? And it's just in what dimension can you regain control of your destiny? Apart from anything else, it's more fun when you have control of your destiny. If you're just, because this system tends to look upwards. And that is a very, very dangerous place. That is the single most striking thing that I have noticed since coming into the public sector, is the upward focus of the system. Would the minister like to do this? Would the politicians like to do that? And it's something that in my world is called upward delegation, and you never do it. And you certainly don't have control of your destiny if you're waiting for an answer from somebody else all the time. So the question is, in tiny ways, how do we create a sense of control of destiny at every level in our system? And that is all about leadership. That's my answer to that. It doesn't happen, by the way, overnight, I would say.
Yeah. But it's the leadership to give people permission to make those leaps themselves, and the leadership to give away.
Of course,
management, and leadership.
Well, to take a risk, it's okay to take a risk. It's okay. It's linked. It's no good taking an ill-judged risk because you'll be wrong. So the question is, how do you put people? This is a very fundamental issue. How do you put people in the position where they can take well-judged risks? And that judgment, I have to say, comes, in my view, from experience, not intellect. And the question, therefore, in every walk of our civil service, how do we build proper experience in our young people so that they can make well-judged risks? And then all we've got to do is take the constraints off and let them go. And that's the journey we're on here in the UK, actually.
Okay. And you see how organisations respond. When organisations come under pressure, the quality of leadership redefines how they respond. Some of them just kind of hunker down, others adapt. Now, the civil service is under pressure. The biggest challenge in your in tray, of course, is Brexit. It's a huge challenge. It's an as yet undefined challenge. We don't know when it will be defined or how the delivery timescale will be. Do you think, though, the very scale and magnitude of that challenge is pushing the civil service organisations to innovate?
Oh, it has to. I mean, never waste a good crisis. Right? I didn't say that, but lots of people said that, and this is a good crisis. So the question is, how do we actually leverage that into making the civil service what we want it to be as opposed to what we are? And there are lots of dimensions of that, and I'll give you a couple. One, we are, the interesting thing about Brexit, which is unusual in a policy space, usually we'll define a policy, because we're all very clever, it'll be really complicated. And then my colleague Tony Meggs would say, then we go into this valley of death between having defined the policy and actually getting anything implemented. And the valley of death is sort of lots of people, scuffling around. It might be a year or two. The interesting thing about Brexit is we haven't got a year or two. We haven't got any time to be in the valley of death. So we have to, these things have to be defined and implemented as soon as 30 days from now, possibly. And so the first piece of innovation that's bought and it is actually, we've been banging on about how do you get policy and implementation joined up. We haven't got any bloody choice. We've got to get policy and implementation joined up, so we have to sort of force that. So that was and I did refer to it when I opened the conference, that's the sort of organisational innovation and evolution that we're doing. This is an accelerator to that. There's no question this is an accelerator to that. And then I would say, if you think about, let's assume that we get through either next week or the week after or March the 29th or June the 29th or whatever. Let's assume we get through something, then there is some future. The serious challenge for this government, this organisation, the civil service, which really has its nose to the grindstone right now, if you're in the civil service, and the politics of it are just horrible. But at some point, we have to be the other side of that. At some point, we have to lift people's heads, and there are really interesting opportunities. This is Britain in a different state in the world. How ambitious do we want to be? How ambitious do we want to be in terms of orchestrating our environmental policy, our agriculture policy, or how we run a border? We can be, the world is our oyster. We can be as ambitious as we like in a way that will bring all sorts of innovation, organisation innovation, technology innovation, all sorts of innovation. So I think in at least those two ways, this is an opportunity for innovation. And shame on us if we miss that opportunity, actually.
It's not really an option.
I'm always half full kind of guy.
We've just got a couple of minutes left. I'm just going to say one or two things, and then John, if you want to wrap up.
Okay.
So I'm not going to try and summarise what we've heard, just to kind of highlight, and I think that conversation really illustrates the pressing importance of making this work, of moving on with innovation. UK civil service under particular Brexit pressure, but governments around the world are facing a whole set of financial and social and technological pressures. Unless we innovate, we will fail to deliver for our citizens, and we will see an increase in the disillusion with government that we are currently seeing. It's really hard for civil services to innovate for all kinds of reasons, but the fact that we had such actually really enthusiastic response to this conference, the fact that you all came here, the fact people come from Australia and all points nearer to discuss this, I think is really encouraging. And you've heard all day from really senior people in influential positions who are totally bought into this agenda. So, as we've heard again, it is about meeting people, about learning how people do things in different places, and I hope that's been useful for you today, making those connections, improving your understanding of the agenda. So thank you all for coming. Thanks also to our knowledge partners and our panellists. We'll be sending out an email asking for your views on what was good and what was bad, and please do let us know. I think we will be doing it all over again next year, so I hope you'll come back. I will see you then. John.
Well, I don't really need to add much, except thank you all for coming. I think it's and you've said it. It is something on everybody's minds. We are united in a common purpose, which is, it's obvious what we need to do. We need to get better citizen-centric services. That's obvious. The only problem is how the hell do you get it done? And that's difficult. So I think the more we can share, the more we can learn from each other, the more we can push each other, challenge each other. I hope we've made some great connections. None of us are, some of us are heading in different places, in different ways, across the world. We're all like-minded. We've all got the same objectives. I think it's great to see such an enthusiastic reception to this first conference. I will back you up by saying I hope we do this again next year, and I hope it becomes an annual thing, because I think there's clearly a real momentum. We all need the help. So thank you to all of the people who've funded it, to you for chairing it all through the day. Thank you very much for that, Matt, and thank you for our partners to do that. But most of all, thank you all for being here and participating and making the go. I think you should give yourselves a round of applause for that. Thank you very much.
Okay,